We'll discuss the presidency in terms of 5 different roles that the president plays. The first and most famous role that the president plays is that of chief executive. The Constitution charges the president with the duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and he heads up an executive branch that carries out various executive functions. For example, the executive branch carries out inspections of businesses and other investigations into possibly illegal activity. If it finds evidence of illegal activity, the executive branch then brings people to court. The executive branch also makes policy by issuing rules and regulations that interpret congressional laws. And of course, the executive branch delivers the services Americans need, such as making sure their Social Security checks arrive on time or responding after a natural disaster. The executive branch consists of 2.8 million civilian employees, the vast majority of which the president will never meet. But in this lecture, we're focusing solely on the president's top 2 groups of advisors, the Cabinet and the EOP. First, let's focus on the Cabinet, which has been around since George Washington and which is more famous. Currently, the Cabinet consists of 16 members, which includes the Vice President. Each member of the Cabinet heads up a federal agency such as the Department of Education or the Department of Energy. All members of the Cabinet must be nominated by the President and have to be confirmed by the Senate. These individuals serve at the pleasure of the President. This means the President can fire them at any time for any reason. The President's other major group of advisors is the Executive Office of the President. This was only established in the 1930s and is not as well known as the Cabinet. The EOP currently consists of 12 members, including the Chief of Staff, who's usually the President's closest advisor, as well as the National Security Advisor and the Budget Director. Like the Cabinet, members of the EOP are appointed by the President. But a big difference between the Cabinet and the EOP is the fact that most members of the EOP do not require confirmation by the Senate. However, members of the EOP also serve at the pleasure of the President, meaning he can fire them at will. Although we've noted the Cabinet is more famous than the EOP is actually more important to the President for 2 major reasons. First, members of the Cabinet are also the heads of federal bureaucracies with tens of thousands of employees. Members of the EOP don't head departments and are responsible solely to the President. Secondly, most members of the EOP do not require Senate confirmation, whereas all members of the Cabinet do, meaning members of the EOP are more loyal to the President. Whereas the EOP is focused solely on the President, Cabinet members actually have a duty to serve the public as well. This means clashes between the President and members of his Cabinet are possible and happen from time to time. For example, President George W. Bush asked his Environmental Protection Agency Director, Christy Todd Whitman, to resign because she wanted to enforce environmental laws more vigorously than he did. In most presidential administrations, it's the Chief of Staff, who is a member of the EOP, who's usually the President's most important advisor. However, President Trump's most important advisor is Steve Bannon, who is given the newly created title of Chief Strategist, but he is also a member of the EOP. Although the EOP is more important than the Cabinet, there are 4 members of the Cabinet who are more important than all the others. They're known as the President's Inner Cabinet. These include the Secretary of State, who's responsible for diplomacy and foreign relations, the Secretary of Defense, who's responsible for matters of war and other military matters, the Secretary of the Treasury, who's responsible for fiscal, monetary, and economic issues, and the Attorney General, who handles official legal matters but not the President's private legal affairs.